Now we're going to look at restricting the weights of some of the envelopes from certain vertices. I've completed setting up the envelopes so that they all encompass the character. If I grab and move the character now, actually, you can see that all the weights are being moved. All the vertices have been affected by the envelopes. They're roughly set up, and you can only usually get envelopes only to a rough stage. Any initial sort of weighting in any package isn't very good for the most part. It just gets you a rough start. You can see that when I pose the character, which I'm going to start doing now, and just keyframing the character in some poses, we can actually look at what actually is happening in some of the joint areas. We need to now start setting all kinds of poses for the character so that we can actually see what we're doing. In this case, I'm going to just put a bit of a foot roll in there. And you want to set it up so that your left side and right side aren't doing the same thing. So you can see the shoulder area is having some really bad problems. I'm going to move this down, like maybe the character's in some sort of running position. Don't even worry, I'm not concerned with this pose looking good, just making sure it's actually doing things that it should from side to side. You just saw an error come up. See the joints flipping over here? I've actually left this in on purpose. I noticed that I'd missed something in the rig, and I'm going to show you what I've done and how to fix it in just 1 second. So what you do is you pose the character, and you can see where the errors are. Now this is one of the drastic errors. Obviously this is something I missed in the rig, and it is now becoming very apparent when I try and animate it. You can see areas like the head here is just completely being destroyed. The part of the neck or the chest is actually taking effect of the head. Now this character is a difficult character to skin because he has no neck. With those big strong guys, there's no neck there, and the problem is that it's very easy to have other envelopes affecting areas that you don't want to have touched. So with this basic pose, let's actually go and fix the first glaring error. Obviously, is this one. This is actually a rigging issue, not a skinning issue. What's happening is we've got these twist bones that we've set up, and I'll go back to frame 0 to show you what's going on. We set up the initial skin to the way the bones currently are. Make sure I'm in local mode, and I'm just going to turn on and show the axis. Just turn on all of these so we can actually see them in move mode. You can see that in the main arm bone, this is the main arm bone that went all the way down to the bottom once we turn off the edit mesh, that Z is sticking up out of the top, Y is pointing forward. If I pick the first twist bone that we put the look at constraint on, you'll notice Z's pointing down and Y is pointing back. When I reset it up on the other side, I didn't actually take this into consideration and forgot to make a setting here. So here's what's happening: is this twist bone's doing what it needs to do. It doesn't matter that this one's flipped over in itself. However, because these two are completely opposite, Z's pointing down on this with Y back, and this is Z up pointing forward, the middle bone has been orientation constrained between the two. And so what's happening now is it's already in a position of flipping at 180 degrees. This is causing the problem that as soon as this bone twists a little bit, this bone will pop from one way to the other and pop back and forth. So what we need to do is we need to just set up our alignment, our source axis alignment, so it's correctly aligned. You can set it, and what will happen is it'll flip that bone around to a better solution. Now, none of these first X, Y, or Z are going to solve the problem. We actually need to say flip. And now that you can see Z is up, Y is forward. Z is up, Y is forward. And that means Z is up, Y is forward on this bone. And this one's not going to have that flipping issue anymore. It has, however, now drastically affected our skinning. In some packages, you actually have to completely detach the model from skin and completely reapply it again, which is a huge pain. Max has got a great feature in the advanced parameters for skin that allows you to basically turn off all of the weighting on the character at a reference frame. In this case, our reference frame is frame 0. You can see ref frame 0. And if you turn off always to form, essentially it's different than doing this. I'm going to just turn the modifier on and off. and you can see that that's what we want. This is what we have. Always deform completely releases the vertices from all of the bones, allowing you to be able to move bones, rotate bones, reposition the entire rig if you wanted inside of the model without affecting the skin. So in this case right now at frame 0, if I move the rig, you can see the skin doesn't actually move with the bone system. But during animation it still does. This is only at frame 0, at the reference frame, is the rig released, or the skin released from the rig. So before I finish, what I should do is just turn it back on. You notice it didn't pop back, so what it's done is completely released it. I turn it back on, it's saying, okay, now you're affected at frame 0 again. So nice simple way of fixing your problems like that. If you suddenly realize you have to move a shoulder joint or move a bone somewhere because it wasn't quite in the right spot, you can just turn off your always deform, make sure your reference frame, turn it off, move your bones around, turn it back on again, and you're good to go. You haven't lost any of your skinning or anything. So now what we need to look at is the next step, is setting up some of the envelopes. You can see that I've gone up, or setting up some of the includes and excludes of the envelopes. I've gone up and I've set envelopes roughly all the way up the body. You can see a lot of areas I'm sure that just don't look right to the trained eye as far as weighting goes. I'm not overly concerned with it. I just wanted to make sure that all of the vertices were actually included. Some of the areas that are going to be the most obvious problems are going to lie from one finger to the other. Right now, the first bone of the index finger actually affects vertices in the middle finger. One way we can fix that is actually with Include Exclude filters, as opposed to actually dealing with it at the vertex weighting level yet. What I have a tendency to do is just go around and fix glaring errors where there's problems, where I know that for a fact this shouldn't be affecting these vertices here. So this envelope should not be affecting these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on filter for or select vertices. You can also get that in your quad menu down here, select vertices. This is defaulted into your quads. And I want to make sure that my selection method is actually set to marquee area so that I can just draw marquees around the vertices. So I want to pick the vertices that I want to exclude from the envelopes at this time. And I'm just going to pick, click on Exclude Verts. And you can see that they've been removed out of that envelope. Doesn't matter how big I make this envelope now. You can see that they can't be affected anymore. It also makes the vertices grayed out whenever I pick an envelope that has excluded verts. You can see that it shows them up as gray, the ones that have been excluded. I'm just going to do a couple undos there and get my selection back. So I'm going to go down the chain here and just say exclude exclude. And I can even do it on the other side now too, because I'm sure there's going to be some overlap with this finger as well. Exclude those. And same again. Exclude. Exclude. And I can go through my fingers this way and make sure that I don't have any overlaps. And of course I'm going to have to do the index from the middle finger as well, because I'm quite sure that if I pick this envelope, there's going to be some overlap this way as well. Same thing. Exclude them. And that way I know they're never going to get dragged into the solution no matter what I do. I can't even accidentally paint on them or anything and paint my weights and make mistakes that way. So same thing on this side, and check and see where I've got problems. And I don't want to do too far up. I don't want to end up in a situation where I'm starting to take weight out of ones that should be. And you can also easily include them back in if you are trying to get a bit of a nice soft overlap in an area and you've excluded them. You can always just go back and include them. But you have to make note of where those are. And again, they show up gray anyhow, so you can see them, see what's happening there. You have to hold down Control when you're picking vertices or envelopes and you have vertices selected, so you get them. And again, that looks probably about what I want, so exclude those. And they're excluded all over. Areas that you might want to look at using this tool would be things like the legs. If you had characters with legs that were very close together, you'd want to include exclude the right from the left and left from the right. The toes, if we had individual bones in all of the toes, you'd want to do that sort of thing. Areas that you don't want to use it in, it would be something like a shoulder area. I've seen people where they've got envelopes quite large to try and get the area they want, this nice softness, but it's starting to take in part of the side. There should be quite a nice fall off and softness in an area like this. And trying to use your include and exclude to stop certain ones, you might find you're starting to get harsh edges between your envelopes, or like you're weighting in a sense, and again, paint weighting starts becoming a problem because you can't paint it in and soften it. So I don't do it in areas like this. I'll do it with the weighting at that time. We can achieve the same thing by weighting vertices to 0. But the problem there becomes is all of a sudden if you're painting weights into one finger, you might start painting those vertices on another part of the one of the other fingers by mistake, and you're starting to include them back into the those envelopes. So you can see the poses now. It looks like we actually have some being left behind now that weren't included it correctly into the envelopes they should have been in the first place. They're probably being pulled along by another part of the character. So let's actually include those, get those back into the envelopes. Looks like they're coming right out of the end one down here. And so that's just going to mean just simply enlarging this envelope until it takes them in. Now, maybe they are actually been in. Oh, they have been. We accidentally excluded those from that finger. So that's what I did. I accidentally excluded them from down here. Had them picked. So what I'm going to do is just say include, and there they're back into it. And it looks like I had them accidentally picked for all of them. So I'm just going to include them back into all parts of this finger, and that's been taken care of. Any changes I made to the envelopes and whatnot, I want to make sure I mirror back over the other side. So mirror mode on, and now I'm going to simply say paste green to blue bones, and it drops them on the other side. And because I'd actually changed the envelope on this side here, and sets it up the way it should be. Now, something that isn't being taken from one side or the other currently is the includes and excludes. Green to blue verts. And if I use the verts mode and mirror over instead of the bones, you can see the includes excludes have been actually sent over. You can see they're grayed out now on the other side. So when you're mirroring the pasting green to blue bones, it's strictly taking the envelopes over. Probably would have been better if it said green to blue envelopes. And then green to blue verts will actually send over all vertex data that you've set up. So any paint weighting and whatnot that you've set in the character. Again, making short work of only having to work on half the character all the time. So now we've got a character that we've fixed the main problem with the hand, and now we've got to do is we have to start looking at other ways of dealing with the weights on all of the vertices and seeing if we can weight them better than what we can with envelopes. That's going to come in the next steps. We're going to start dealing with vertex weighting.